Tuesday, October 28th. The time is 6:04 p.m. and we are convened as the Provo City School Board of Education, meeting at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah. And we're going to begin with a roll call with Devin.
Devin Daly, Business Administrator.
Lisa Boyce, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Vice President.
Jennifer Partridge, Board President.
Wendy Dow, Superintendent.
Meg Van Wagenen, Board Member.
Emily Harrison, Board Member.
Melanie Hall, Board Member.
Rachel Rue, Student Board Member.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to convene our business meeting?
I move that we convene our business meeting.
Motion made by Board Member Boyce. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Hall. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now in our business meeting. And we are going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and our Deputy Superintendent, Jason Cox, will lead us in that.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So the first item on our agenda is an opportunity for public input. Do we have anyone here tonight to give public input? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and close that portion of the meeting. Before we move on to our business items, we are going to go back to two things from our study session. So the first is that we did not get to finish our policies, and so we're going to turn it over to Wendy for that. And then afterwards, we're going to have Jason Cox come back and explain the chart we were looking at on open enrollment. So when it comes back to us next time, we can understand some of the data a little bit better.
Okay, so let's talk about policy 1410. This is an update to existing policy. What you want to understand is that 1410 and the new accompanying procedures were all embedded in one policy, and it seemed like it was very confusing and difficult to sort through. So based on suggestions from the board as well as policy committee, we have separated that out. So 1410 now just has our public notice requirements of board meetings. And so it updates the notice requirements for those board meetings to make sure that they align with current state law. And we added this purpose, lines 11 through 15, so that they know that this gives us the public meeting notice requirements that applies to all board meetings. And then we have subsequent procedures for the notices of a hearing and the actual process of a hearing. It also, in lines 20, it really lines out what we have to do for giving written notice of meetings and what that looks like. So that starts on line 28. And then we did omit some language, lines 42 to 54, somewhere it was like, you have to put this in a newspaper, and we don't do it that way anymore. So we updated that language according to state code. Line 56 becomes really important because it is about making sure that the board only acts on items that are listed on the meeting agenda. And then we have put together two options for language for you. And you may also come up with a third option or fourth option if you would like. So basically what it's trying to say is that when the board is conducting a public hearing with regard to a budget or a tax rate, which exceeds the certified tax rate, the agenda has to be limited to just those items. If you are going to have business items, those have to, on the same day, those have to happen ahead of time. They cannot happen after that. So we have two different pieces of language. One kind of breaks it down a little bit more. In option 2, you'll notice that it kind of has this separate line, 85, the hearing must, that wasn't what I wanted, 83. If the board also needs to conduct other general business on the same day, that business must be handled in a separate meeting that ends before the budget or tax rate hearing begins. And so.
I don't have the version with two options.
Oh.
So we'll.
I don't know. Okay.
Are you talking about bond issuance hearing notice option 1 and 2? Because I see that.
This is on policy 1410.
Actual policy.
So mine
On
is
the
14, I'm looking at
actual-
1410 P1.
Oh, is it P1?
Nope, 1410, the actual policy. Can I take over the projection? Let me share it with all of you really quick. Let's see. 1410. It's a procedure. Right here. Okay, I'm just going to email it to all of you really quick. So you have the latest one. Let's see. Okay. Should be sent to you. See if you can pull that up. If you scroll down to line 71 and then 79. Do you all see that now?
It's just coming in.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I see you all popping on there. So I'll just read it. Option 1, when the board is meeting to conduct a public hearing with respect to adopting the budget or levying a tax rate which exceeds the certified tax rate, the board's agenda must be limited to the hearings and discussion and action on those items. If the board holds another meeting on the same date to address general business items, the other meeting must conclude before the meeting on the budget and/or tax rate levy. The meeting must also be available for individuals to attend or participate either in person or remotely through electronic means. Option 2 simplifies it further. When the board holds a public hearing to adopt a budget or to approve a tax rate that exceeds the certified tax rate, that meeting's agenda must be limited to the hearing and any related discussion or action. If the board also needs to conduct other general business on the same day, that business must be handled in a separate meeting that ends before the budget or tax rate hearing begins. The hearing must be accessible to the public either in person or through electronic participation. Do you have a preference on the language?
Fingers?
Fingers?
I like to.
Two. Okay. All right. Okay, let's move on and talk about the procedures. So let me go to 1410. And make sure you have the right procedure as well. Yeah, I don't think there's too much that changed on this one. Procedure 2, we have a variety of language. So what this does is it goes through and does the public hearing notice requirements. So it's just the notice and it breaks it down by entity as to what you want to see happen, what needs to happen in each of those hearings. So when you look at, there was a question on lines 14 to 15 and 31 to 32. It repeats it in every section. It says, in addition to complying with the public notice requirements in policy 1410, blah, 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 then they must do this. The question came up, do we need to keep repeating that? And the conversation that we had in policy committee is, these are requirements that are in addition to that, and so it probably is important to make sure that that is repeated in every section. If we want to write that in a more general section, we can do that. I didn't know if that repetition was annoying enough or if that actually, if people feel like that's more helpful. I don't know if you have strong opinions about that.
I think it's good.
Line 29, because it talks about truth in taxation hearing notice, says there was a question that came up, do we need to link the code to truth in taxation policy? We do include it in the legal references, but we do sometimes link codes in other places. Do we feel like that's important enough to link again here? That was a question that we asked. Any thoughts?
Remember the numbers and letters of this code, but so when I look down on lines 39 and 40 where you've linked section 45, 1101 and section, are those like, I think since we link those, I actually personally do think it would be helpful to
Okay.
link the code, just because once I read the code finally, I was like, oh, okay.
Okay, you got it.
That's
So
pretty
many at
clear
the bottom,
language.
I don't know until you click on it, which
Okay.
one it is. So.
Perfect. And then question, or on line 43, it says, there was a question asked, do we need to specify the requirements for other taxing entities in the county? No. And so I'm not sure where that, I can't remember where that question
It's
came
me.
from. Okay,
And
go
it's
ahead.
because, remember, there was a new requirement that says when we notice this.
Have to notice every
We have to
every
notice.
entity in the county.
But we don't have to specify the requirements for the other.
No.
No, I wasn't
entities.
saying
We
their
just have to
requirements, I'm
notice
just
it.
saying, do we want to
Okay,
put
yep.
in here that included in the
So
notice?
do you want us to add that as language here?
Probably should
Okay.
if we're doing the whole process. So it's just, it has to be on our website and available for people as they come into the hearing.
Okay.
Both our notice and
And the other.
other county entities.
The county actually creates a combined notice that has
Okay.
all of the entities in the county.
Okay. Thank you. Lines 87 to 101, we have options for two language. Option 1 was what was included in the model policy to update. And then option 2 was an attempt to try to simplify it or make more sense. I'm just going to give you a minute to read both of those rather than me reading them out loud, unless you want me to read them out loud for the record. I could.
Any thoughts?
Is the difference between shall and must important? Or
It's the same.
we've decided those are the
It's
same? We've been told those
totally
the
the
same,
same.
okay. So I guess must is better because it's more clear than shall, which is in the second, anyway.
I like to.
I like to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Me
Okay.
as well.
And then just make sure that the code is linked, because
Yep,
I'm sure.
it's-
Okay.
Yep. Terry, did you have
No, I
something?
was just going to say, I'm glad you're picking two because option 1 has grammar problems. So.
Okay, good. See? That's why, I just want you to know, I didn't write option 1, but I didn't write option 2 either. ChatGPT helped me with option 2, so you're welcome. Lines 107 through 137, trying to separate out, this is for lease revenue bond notices. The reason this is in blue is this isn't new, it's just, it came from the policy and we pushed it into the procedure. So this is the language that was in place before. And then we have on lines 140, you have your budget appropriation increase meeting notice, and then lines 148, where you start talking about school closure or boundary change hearing notices, we struck language that is outdated, so updated that. And referenced policy 1450, we can link that, which we really line out very clearly what that also looks like. So it's kind of in both places, which I think is actually helpful. Any questions on that procedure? Okay. Procedure 2, let me switch to that one. Okay. Most of this is also in blue because it was in policy before, and now we have a procedure for it. So while the prior procedure is about the notice requirements for the hearing, this procedure is about the actual requirements of the hearing. And so just trying to lay this out. So line 37, there was a question where it says the taxing entities in which the power to set tax levies is vested in the same governing board or authority may consolidate the public hearings into one public hearing. It's important to note that when we do, say, an MBA bond and we have to do, go into the municipal building authority to vote on that. Those are considered two separate entities. That does not apply in this particular situation. Devin gave the example, as I was talking with her, about the library and the city. So Provo City Libraries, the same taxing entity as Provo City. You could do one hearing for the tax increases for the city and for the library, is how I'm understanding that, because it's under the same taxing entity.
Also
MBA is
several
different.
special districts, because there's the, like, special sewage districts. They have 4 entities, and so they can do them all at once.
So does this apply to us, or
Nope.
could we strike it?
I wouldn't strike it, but we might want to add language that says this does not apply to a district board of education because the municipal building authority is a separate entity and isn't a taxing entity, right? So we could add language to that if that makes you feel more comfortable, just so that nobody gets confused that we're a single taxing entity. Because if you'll notice when we did our MBA vote, we did a hearing as the municipal building authority and we did a hearing as the Board of Education, and that was what was. So do we want to add language to clarify that? Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then it's the same thing, lines 44 through 47. If the district holds a public meeting for the purpose of addressing general business of the district on the same date, the public meeting has to conclude before the beginning of the public hearing. So any questions on, any other questions or suggestions on this particular procedure? Does that make sense how it's laid out? Go ahead, Lisa.
Just lines 48 and 49, the board may hold a budget hearing on the same date as a public hearing for truth and taxation purposes. Do we want to add something there clarifying that the budget hearing would need to conclude prior? I know it's in other places already that it would conclude prior to that
Sure.
truth and taxation hearing, but just restate it right there maybe.
This procedure is just for taxes, not for
Correct.
bond hearings and
Correct.
things, right?
Correct. My other question is, the other way that you could do it is you as a board have a right to decide that you won't do those hearings with any other meetings, that you will always hold them on a separate day. So there are districts that actually put it into policy that any hearing has to happen on a separate day from any other type of business item. You have the option to do that so that it protects you from ever having a situation where that gets conflated or somebody gets confused about that. And so that might be something to consider. I don't know how you feel about that.
I don't know that I want to put that in policy. But
Oh, so we could still do that even if we
Yes,
didn't have it here,
absolutely.
right? We could
Yep.
still make that decision. It's an option, right?
All right, that's all I have.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you so much, Wendy. Okay, we're going to now invite Deputy Superintendent Jason Cox back to go over the open enrollment, what is that? Capacity report that we were looking at earlier to kind of help us understand how to read it. So as we're considering it between now and when we bring it back, we're clear on that. So,
Yeah,
thank you,
absolutely.
Jason.
I'm sure there's still questions that I will need to work on between now and the next time, but I felt like maybe going through the report really quickly could be helpful as we're reading it and looking through it together. So if you open that up, we'll look at the very bottom, school. We're going to just follow THS through the process to see if we can kind of answer questions along the way. So that first column talks about the number of teaching stations available in the school. So right now, there are 113 classrooms available at Timpview High School, based on that walkthrough we talked about. Now, if you times that number by 30, and that's saying 30 kids could fit in every one of those classes, and they were all completely full, then the number of students in the school would be 3,390. Currently, the school has identified 2 of those stations as not being classrooms. So we have removed those down to the 111. That's how you get to that number of available teaching stations. And If you multiply that number then by 28, which is the number of students that we allow in our classes, we plan for in our FTE numbers, not allow necessarily, but we plan for to give enough staffing to cover. We do it by 28.5 to 1 at the high school level. That would give you that 3164. Then if you take 90% of that 3164, you end up with 2847. That's 90% of that. And the number of teachers given to the school is 88. So that's that next column. And if you do the adjusted capacity based on the number that we give them for FTE, that would mean the maximum capacity for the school based on the 28.5 is 2,506 students.
Can I ask a quick question before you go
Sure.
too far?
Yeah.
When we have the FTEs, it says it's for the 2024-25.
I think that's a typo, but I'll clarify because it should be
Okay.
25, 26. So I'll make sure that's a good question. I noticed that too, and I'll clarify with student services on that number
Thank you.
or that date because I think it should be updated to 25, 26, but great question. Then if you take 90% of that 2506, you end up with the 2255, which that is the late capacity. So I'm going to stop there for a second and talk about early capacity and late capacity. Early capacity is based on the overall number if you multiplied by the 30 per classroom. And I think that's driven by state law that says that's how you have to capture that 90% for early enrollment. Then when you shift to late enrollment, because early enrollment runs from November to February, anybody wanting to get into the school for that next school year between February and August, they're now in the late enrollment period, and you multiply that or you use the number based on our actual FTE for the late enrollment number. So then the actual number of students attending at Timpview High School this year is 2252, so 2,252 students.
I mean, that makes sense to me then that the other number would be 2425 because that number is being used to determine late enrollment. And so that's before now, right? So they had to use last year's FTE to calculate that number. I think so. I mean, I think that's the right number.
Very well could be. That could be the reason. So I'll have to ask and make sure with student services. That's a great point. And then the next column, it says seats available for late open enrollment for 25-26. So if you look at that 2255 in the green column, that's what it says would have been available for late open enrollment. And we have 2252. So there's only 3 available spaces left at Timpview High School, and that's why it's considered full. Where there's a school above it, Provo High School, who has 112 spaces available even at late enrollment. And so they're considered still open even in late enrollment.
Oh, I see.
So is that helpful?
Yes. It's helpful.
And then when you move on to the next column, that's a projected number for the 26-27 school year for next school year. That 23-22 for Timpview High School. When we move on over to the 525 of the projected available numbers for early open enrollment, we have to go clear back over to the 2847, and then we subtract the 2252, and that's how we get the 525 available spaces for early enrollment. That would change for late enrollment, but for early enrollment, there's a little bit bigger capacity. And someone asked earlier, which school is the closest to being closed or full? It's actually Lakeview. If you look up there, they only have a negative space actually available in the early open enrollment based on the projection. But you can see that the actual capacity, 669 attending this year, is about 30 or 25 students lower than current students. So that's why they're still recommending it be open, because even though the projection is that they would be just over, they're thinking that they want to be able to try to have as many students up close to that 90% as possible, which most schools really like to do because they want to have as many students attending as possible for their capacity. So I'll leave it there, but I just wanted to go through that example because I thought that might be helpful in questions as we prepare for the next time. I didn't want to take too much time, but I also want to just apologize because I should have started with this in the earlier meeting. And one other thing I want to apologize for is not having given credit to the people who do all the work behind this. Student Services does an amazing job. You have Liz, Jason Garrison, Carrie. They do such great work on helping our families through this process of both early open enrollment and late enrollment. And so I just want to make sure I mention the work that they do and give them credit for putting all of this together for us. I'll work with them to make sure I clarify on the 24-25 question that's on there. But any other questions you'd like me to look at when I work with them?
Just a clarifying question. So early enrollment is from when to when?
It's from November 15th to February 6th, I believe, which is an interesting date, but I think that's what I read in there is February 6th.
Yep, so first Friday.
Policy we did.
Okay, and then February 7th through the beginning, or through October 1st, I guess through August?
Through August, we usually say through the beginning of school year. So through our August date of start of school would be the late open enrollment period.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So I want to clarify that I've just discovered why we have an issue with these numbers. So these numbers are based on Student Services original numbers. The numbers that you guys went through and when you counted all of the classrooms, that was for the boundary and feasibility study, and they are not accurately reflected on this open enrollment capacity report. So for example, it's showing on here that Amelia has its functional capacity is 840. On the boundary and feasibility study, when you guys went through and actually counted classrooms and you went through, it's 627. Oh, wow. So we need to get those. It's not Student Services' fault in any of this because they're just using their old formulas. We never shared those numbers with them. So we need to get them that report, Devin, and get that over to Jason so we can adjust that capacity, and then we'll have the right numbers, because I think you're correct when you're saying there's no way Timpview has 113 spaces. When I'm looking at the MGT report, that's correct. They do not. So I think that will help us to make sure that we're making the right decision. And I forgot that when we counted that was for boundary and feasibility. That wasn't, we did that like in January, I think, and so I'm just sad that we didn't share that. That's not on Student Services at all. That's on me for not realizing that. So I'm sorry about that, but we'll get with them and figure that out.
No, that's a good catch. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Okay. I do think there's other work for me to do between now and then, because there are schools like Amelia Earhart that has class district program classrooms.
Yeah.
Provo Peaks, Sunset View. There's several schools that have district program classes. And I know that when we did the walkthrough, I believe we counted that, and I don't think that's reflected on here. It's not reflected in this either, so we can share that. So we'll work on that.
Okay.
And I have one question. When it says Provo Peaks, is it possible to put like a little asterisk that says includes sunrise or not include sunrise
Yeah, we can
numbers?
do that. We can do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also thought it might be helpful because in that boundary and feasibility study, it also gives us a list of how many students permitted last year. So it just kind of, and we could update that so that you understand how many kids are going out of the school versus how many kids are coming in, so that you can, I think that might be helpful as we're looking at that as well. So I didn't even think about that, so I apologize. So thank you. Thanks, Jason.
Well, good to get a good first look at it now and iron out kinks. It's great. Good thing is we have time to keep working on it. So, okay. So we will now go to the business items that are on our agenda. So we are going to start with the large purchase request for the Wasatch Wall. I'll have Devin give a quick summary.
The cost that's listed is just the cost of rebuilding the wall by HADCO. they've committed and Hogan's committed to cover half of the cost. So the not to exceed amount for the total project is $752, but the total not to exceed for the district is $351, $124.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the large purchase request for the Wasatch Wall?
I move that we approve the large purchase request not to exceed the amount of $702,248, of which $351,124 will be the maximum that will be the responsibility of the district for Hadco and Hogan to commence with the repair and drainage improvements of the Wasatch Elementary School wall.
Good job. A lot. All right. Motion made by Board Member Van Wagenen. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Hall. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
I have a question. I'm
Yeah,
sorry
Lisa.
that I didn't think to ask it earlier. I see, okay. I guess then I just answered my question looking at this. I just wanted to point out for the public's sake, if they didn't listen earlier, that these are not the total costs, though there are significant sort of soft costs not counted here that are already being absorbed by Hadco and IGES.
And Hogan.
And Hogan and IGES specifically. And so when he was talking about some of those costs, he has estimated them, he being Hogan Construction, tell me his name.
Chris Hogan.
Sorry, Chris. To be about $350,000, if I recall right. Is that approximately what is it? $300,000. So actually, Provo School District is, based on this, really maximally liable for a third of those costs rather than 50%. And it may even be less than a third once all of those other things come in. And so I feel like this is a really great collaborative solution, and I'm just grateful for everyone who's willing to do the work for this.
If this passes, it will take about 3 weeks for it to be complete?
About 3 weeks, and they will likely start, hopefully next week. I don't have the exact timing, but that's what he was hoping.
They are anxious to get started.
They are all anxious to get it done.
Meg?
I just want to thank Devin for, I think, being like kind of the glue to kind of manage all the different entities and the different engineers and keeping, I think, even us on task and kind of helping us regroup when need be, as I think there were tensions, right, and kind of really navigating the complexity of this situation. And I feel like we've landed in a great spot, and I really appreciate, I know it's not lost on me how much effort and headache that took. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we've been working on this for over 6 months at this point, right? And so I think there have been moments where we all wish it could go faster, but we wanted to make sure that we did it right. And the fact that we have 3 engineering companies who've looked at this and they all are in agreement with this plan to rebuild the wall and then what to do moving forward to check other aspects of the wall that hadn't come down, that helps me feel good about this plan, that we have those 3 groups. So, any other comments? All right, we will go ahead and vote. All in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Can we just cheer? I'm so happy right now.
Hey, so good.
Like a huge relief of breath out.
I'm just excited
Holding
to
our
put a
breath for
check
6
mark
months.
on my list of things to do.
Good job.
There we go.
I might take balloons to Wasatch Bros.
All right, item number D2 is we are going to take a vote on our certified tax rate, and people might be wondering why we are doing that. Haven't we voted on our tax rate before recently? And Devin, I will let you explain.
So this is just the adjusted tax rate after the two situations. The first one is the valuation that was done incorrectly by the county, and then the second was the state not certifying our tax rate. So this is our tax rate for the year. That's what went out on everybody's tax notices, the cards that went out. So this is just to approve that rate.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the certified tax rate of 0.006922.
Do we need to say for what year it is, or is that enough?
The 2025 tax rate, yep. Sorry.
I move that we approve the 2025 certified tax rate of .006922.
And it's 25, not 26, Devin?
Because the property taxes
Oh my
are assessed
gosh.
here.
Because they're
Someone
assessed
else
in
do it.
25. Okay, just making sure.
No, it's a good
Okay.
question.
All right, thank you, Lisa, for making that motion. Motion made by Board Member Boyce. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member McCabe. Do we have any discussion? All right, all in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. All right, next on our agenda, we have the possible approval of the open enrollment status. Based on the discussion we have just had, it sounds like people would like to save that so we can get some more information. So do we have a motion to table this item?
I move, go ahead.
I move that we table this item.
Okay, motion made by Board Member McCabe. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Hall. Any discussion? Okay, we had plenty of discussion a minute ago. So, all in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Next is the larger purchase request for the AV updates for the Provo High School auditorium and such. Devin, do you want to give a quick
Yep,
overview?
so this is to update lots of the AV equipment in Provo High School that has become outdated and is not compatible with some of the new things that have been purchased for the auditorium.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the large purchase request in the amount of $143,043 for AV updates at Provo High School.
Okay, motion made by Vice President Hales. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Van Wagenen. Do we have any discussion? Okay, all in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, now we have some policies, so we'll start with policy 1520, BA appointment.
This just defines how a business administrator is appointed and the guidelines for what to do when you're doing an interim business administrator.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the updated policy 1523, business administrator qualifications and
We're on
responsibilities.
1520, Melanie.
I'm in the wrong one.
Thank you.
Sorry. I move that we approve policy 1520, business administrator appointment as discussed in open meetings tonight.
All right, motion made by Board Member Hall. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Harrison. Do we have any discussion? All right, all in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Now on to 1523, BA qualifications.
1523, business administrator will take and sign the constitutional oath of office, and the signed copy shall be filed with the business administrator.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the updated policy 1523, business administrator qualifications and responsibilities as discussed in open meetings tonight.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Van Wagenen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice President Hales. Any discussion? All in favor with aye?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next is policy 1540, administrative appointments.
This just outlines the policy or the policy that we use for how we appoint our administrators, creating a candidate pool and what that looks like and what candidates can expect.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve updated policy 1540, administrative appointments as discussed in open meetings tonight.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Van Wagenen. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Boyce. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And next is 1543, duties of principals.
So this policy just establishes the duties of a school principal as the board kind of delegates some of their authority to school principals. We did discuss that on line 44, we are taking out the word plant. So if you decide to make a motion for this, make sure that you state on line 44, omitting the word plant.
Okay.
Or omitting the word plant.
School
No, it
is
already
right
is
before
there,
it.
so we're omitting the word plant, because it says school plant, and that sounds weird. Okay.
Unless you have a school plan.
All right. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve updated policy 1543, duties of principals, omitting the word plant on line 44 as discussed in open meetings tonight.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Boyce quite flawlessly. Good job. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Van Wagenen. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And our last policy is 1620 district reports.
So this policy just lays out the requirements and deadlines for our annual reports. We did talk about adding the word financial, but decided that doesn't fit because of the assurances that are done. Those reports sometimes are statistical reports and other things that we have to report to the state board that aren't necessarily financial in nature.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve updated policy 1620, district reports as discussed in open meetings tonight.
Okay, motion made by Vice President Hales. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Hall. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously, and that brings us to the end of our business items. We had put, after our business meeting tonight, the possibility of a closed executive session for the purpose of discussing litigation if any board members felt that that was needed. So the option tonight is to either just adjourn or to adjourn and go into an executive session. So would someone like to make one of those two motions?
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Hall. Is there any?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you.
We need to
Okay.
second.
Just to make sure.
Okay.
Okay, so seconded by Board Member Boyce. We are adjourned, and our next board meeting will be Tuesday, November 11th.
Oh, already.